For quiet now, I'm hoping to be able to do this without the mic. So I'm just going to put it back down and I'll start. But I'll make sure you guys know. All right, can everybody hear me? Yeah. Good. Okay, so who am I? I don't need to. I don't need to introduce myself because you obviously already know who I am from TV. You guys see me on TV? I'm a big TV star. No. Well, I won $47,000 on Wheel of Fortune in 2010. So, like most of you, or some of you weren't born yet, or you were like 1 year old, or not even, right? So obviously you don't know me from TV. But if you do know me, it's probably from coaching some of you in soccer or flag football. And you may also know me as Ryan Walsh's father. Ryan's in 7th grade, you guys probably know him. Ironically, one of the things I'll be talking to you about today is making good decisions. So I'm sure you can understand why I'm not exactly pleased with Ryan right about now. He's in a lot of trouble. I'm married to my college sweetheart, Sarah, who's actually taping video back there. And I have another son named Aiden, who's a sophomore at East Greenwich High School. I'm 48 years old, and after spending 25 years working in corporate America, last year I left my job to go back to school to become a mental health counselor. You'll find out my why in just a bit. Beyond that, I'm a marathon runner, an avid weightlifter, and I compete in crazy obstacle races where I climb walls and crawl through mud under barbed wire for fun, sometimes taking 5 or 6 hours. But here's what you can't see. My brain works differently than most people's, and I struggle with anxiety and depression as a result. And for years, I handled that in the worst way possible. Raise your hand. I need some help here. Raise your hand if you've ever felt stressed or overwhelmed about school, friends, family, just life. You want put that hand up and keep it up if that ever made you feel weak or embarrassed. Or someone ever told you to just get over it, toughen up. Yeah.
Do you want to experience?
Okay, Brandon.
So let me tell you a little bit more about my story. Sometimes when I'm telling my story, I may get a bit emotional because it's so personal to me. Don't worry though. Nowadays, I know that's what makes me a real man. Showing and discussing my emotions, not being afraid to cry, sometimes at a dog rescue video on Instagram, being true to who I am in my heart, but sharing my story to hopefully help others who may be struggling is an important part of my healing and recovery process. So, my story. Little Kenny, that's what I was called then, grew up in North Kingstown, just down the road, and I'm the youngest of 6 kids. When I was your age, my house was complicated, I guess you could say. We were very poor. There was lots of fighting, drugs, police showing up. I coped by becoming 2 different people. Here I was outward Ken, soccer star, class clown, totally fine. My real Ken, scared, angry, completely lost. My inside didn't match my outside, and that could be uncomfortable physically and mentally. And sometimes when that happens, instead of talking about it, kids try to find an easy way out that makes the pain go away. I talked a little bit about what was going on in my house, and I mean, I could go on for days and days, right? But I need you all to understand, as bad as the stuff was that was going on in my house, you have classmates sitting amongst you right now who have those same things going on in their house. I know that East Greenwich is perfect, and we don't have any problems, and everybody does great in school, and blah, blah, blah. But that's just not the case, right? Everybody's got something going on, and some kids more than others. So to make the pain go away, that's what I did. By the age of 15, I had started experimenting with drugs and alcohol. This was one bad decision in a long line of bad decisions. Now here comes the sad part. My sister passed away when I was 17. I barely even cried. I wasn't taught how to cope with difficult emotions and talk to people who care. I choked them down like a man and moved on with life. Instead, I went and got high. I would lose my mom 10 years later, and I did the same thing until I was about 35 years old. Whenever life hurt or I had complex emotions, which was a lot, I drowned it in drugs and alcohol, even while graduating college and building a successful career. So I grew up in a house, and there was a lot of fighting about money. We were poor, and we couldn't afford things, and mom and dad were fighting, and my siblings were fighting, and all that stuff. So for me, I thought once I went to school, right, school was always easy to me, I could do that no problem. Once I went to school and I built this career, successful career, and I had the big house, right, and I had money and a nice car, I thought I had made it. But I was the most miserable I'd ever been. I was on the verge of death, literally. My mental health had deteriorated to the point I was barely sleeping at night and felt sad almost all the time. At night, I could barely sleep, getting 2 to 3 hours of sleep many nights. I'd toss and turn all night, and I'd started to get bad anxiety attacks, only I didn't know that's what they were at the time. Finally, when my dad died of cancer from cigarette smoking, I asked myself, do I want to end up like everyone else I've lost? That's when I did the most courageous thing I've ever done. I asked for help, and that's when my healing journey began. So when people ask me about my father's death, which still is really hard to deal with, my best friend, the only person that was with me, supported me the whole time, I say that it's the greatest gift he ever gave me. And that might sound weird, but in that moment, he gave me clarity. He gave me the ability to ask tough questions and answer them. Honestly. So what saved me? Soccer was my first lifeline when I was young. When everything was chaotic, the field was where I felt safe. Excelling on the soccer field and in the classroom meant it looked like I had it all going on from the outside, even though I was really struggling inside. I want you to remember that. Even the, quote, popular kids who are good at sports can still be struggling just like anyone else. We're all human. We're all in this together. I just ask that you be kind, be compassionate, ask someone if they're okay, if you're worried about them. One of the first things I did as part of my healing journey was start running and lifting weights again. I lost 50 pounds during that time, and I firmly believe that saved my life. Today, fitness is a major part of my physical and mental health routine. Science proves that exercise reduces anxiety. I live it and feel it every day. But the real game changer for me, it will be for some of you, and maybe it already has been, therapy, right? Medication, absolutely no more drugs and alcohol, and being open and honest about my struggles and sharing that with people that care about me. When I was struggling the worst, Sarah, would ask me, like, are you okay? Fine, I'm worried about you. You're not the same. You're sad, you don't want to go out of the house, blah, 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 that type of stuff. And for me, I didn't know how to talk about it, right? And I felt like she was kind of picking on me. right? Because I wasn't open to the conversation at that moment. And so I go on years later to start seeing a counselor and telling her about, why I don't talk to Sarah about what's going on up here. Sorry. And she said to me, well, do you really want Sarah to be able to actually understand what's going on up there? Like having her experience the same things as me? And of course the answer is no, right? I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. And so, who's the, now that kind of, I guess it awakened me, right? To say that here was Sarah, we're married, she would do whatever she could in the world to help me, and I wasn't letting her in. I wasn't letting her help. She was probably the person I needed the most on this journey. So understand that mental illness or addiction happens so slow that we often don't realize it's happening to us, right? Day by day by day. You don't wake up one day and feel depressed or all of a sudden have anxiety, but it happens slow enough so that we don't understand it or we don't see it ourselves. But for people around us, they can see it a lot earlier than we can. And so, when they bring this to us, you have to be open to the conversation from that person that loves you enough in your life to ask you about it. And so for you, most of you, some of you, the Sarah in your life is mom and dad. And I know you guys are teenagers right now, and I know whenever mom and dad say something, they probably don't get a good reaction from you, right? But if they've built up the courage enough to come to you with a concern and sit you down and ask you how you're doing, they love you so much, they care enough that they're trying to open the door for you to talk, right? And if we don't talk, then that's when we look for other coping mechanisms like I use. So what I ask you to do, and anybody who I speak to, is just a fairly regular self-assessment. Every 3 months, every 6 months, look back and say, what was I doing 6 months ago? And then what was I doing a year ago? And if a year ago, I always wanted to be out with my friends, and I was very social, and I wanted to go to the movies or do whatever it is you guys do, and then now, you don't really want to leave the house that much. Going to a game or going to the movies with anxiety can be very hard with all of the things going on around you. And so compare yourself today to yourself from 6 months ago or a year ago. And say, what is different, if anything? Is that a warning sign to me? And then what you do with that answer, it's up to you, right? But have the conversation with yourself. Care enough about yourself. Love yourself enough to have the conversation. But most importantly, here's the thing I wish I knew at your age. It's not weak to ask for help. It's the strongest thing you'll ever do. It might save your life. I want to do a little exercise here. So I want you to turn to someone near you and answer the question, one thing that helps me when I'm stressed is what?
What helps you when you're sad?
So now ask that person, and let's not go on that long, so you can come back to me because I think I'm under a time limit here, so I don't know how long we have. But I want you to now ask that same person, right? If that doesn't work, who is the adult in your life you talk to about it?
Grandpa Miguel. Often talk about
All right, guys, back to me. By the way, I love your enthusiasm. That's great. I'd like you to come away from this and build your very own survival kit, right, based upon what I learned in my struggles and in my journey. I want you to find your soccer, what soccer was to me, right, an activity that clears your mind. Make time in your schedule to play as much soccer as you can. Make it a habit. Never let it go. Keep it in your life for as long as you live. 2, notice the warning signs for you or your friends. Sleep changes, mood swings, feeling sad a lot, drugs or alcohol. And I want you to ask your friends if they are okay or you feel worried about them. This can be a very tough conversation. Guys, stay with me, guys. Hold on. This can be a very tough conversation, right? But if you love your friends enough, you'll get over the awkwardness and ask. Once again, like I said, you may just save their life. Number 3, know the trusted adults in your life that you can ask for help if you are struggling. So you're in a perfect place for this, and I know the counselors have talked to you guys plenty of times about how to find a counselor. But a teacher, right? A lot of us have a favorite teacher we develop a really close connection with. Any teacher in this school will take time to sit down with you and talk about whatever's on your mind. Sure. Ask your friends. Or go to the counselor, right? Another family member if it's not your parents, right? So just know that you have these options in your head if you need them. And so in closing, I've buried siblings, my best friend due to an overdose, my parents, both of Sarah's parents. So sadly Ryan doesn't remember his grandparents because he lost them to mental illness or addiction before he was old enough to remember. But the hardest funeral, the person I almost became. I was frighteningly close. Although I'm doing great today and my anxiety and depression is very manageable, I spent a lot of years in pain and I had a lot of dark days. And I just wish that you don't end up having to go through that. But my healing didn't happen overnight. So it's been the longest, hardest road I've ever traveled and the hardest work I've ever put in. Perseverance, dedication, willpower, doctors, therapy appointments. It can seem exhausting. It might seem like too much or a lot for you guys, but it's the most rewarding work I've ever done. Look at how amazing my life is today. I couldn't have ever imagined my life looking like this. Being healthy and happy with family and friends by my side that love me. I never, but I do still have bad days. I think this is important, right? I have bad days and I have bad weeks. And every once in a while, I'll have a bad month. And I talk to my counselor, I talk to my family, I talk to my psychiatrist, I talk to the people that love me, and they help me get through it. I know because I've done this before and I've been through these ups and downs before, that if I do the right things, if I don't move to drugs and alcohol to cope, if I stay with my workouts, if I stay with my positive things in my life, I will come through on the other side. I've just got to put in the work. That can be really hard because at that time, that hard work can seem like the last thing on earth you want to do. You got to fight when you get there. But you don't have to wait until you're an old unk like me, as Ryan calls me, before making change. You can start making good choices today. Like going for a jog, joining a team, texting a friend, or asking for help if needed. Give me a couple more minutes, guys. 4 key takeaways from today, right? It's okay not to be okay. You guys have probably heard this before, and it's true, it's very true. It's cliche, but it's true. But I don't like that saying by itself. Because if you're saying it's okay not to be okay, there's no action there. And if you sit in that spot of not being okay, you continue the downslide and you may end up in crisis mode. And when we end up in crisis mode, we have a lot less resources available to us. It's a lot harder to get help. It's a lot harder to pull yourself out of it. You have to be willing to step up early. So I like to say, it's okay not to be okay, as long as you're taking action. And that action could be, today, I'm just gonna go for a walk. Right, whatever that is. And addiction is not about bad people. It's about pain. Mental illness does not make you weak. It makes you human. These are two very serious diseases, very difficult diseases, but they're treatable. And, be kind to each other. Real men and women cry and talk about their emotions. They face their struggles head on and ask for help when needed. And lastly, find your soccer field and never stop playing. Fitness is an integral part of living a physically and mentally healthy life. So thank you so much for letting me share my truth with you. Anybody have any questions?